You already had a couple of prayers, but I would like to read the Lord's Prayer in the Seaman's Version, because I'm sure that none of you have probably have ever heard, and it is quite pretty. I often, and on the Navy ships, if there wasn't a chaplain, the captain would pick what they call a lay leader. And of course, I got picked as a lay leader myself a few times. So, you know, when you get a bunch of seamen down there in the afternoon for church, you wonder what the dickens do you do? Well, you open up the Bible and read the Bible, and they all think that you're a preacher. Well, I'm not a preacher, but I did a lot of preaching. The Lord is my pilot; I shall not drift. He guides me across the dark waters. He steers me in deep channels. He keeps my log. He pilots me by the star of holiness for his name's sake. Yea, though I sail mid the fenders and tempests of life, I shall dread no danger, for he is near me. His love and care shelter me. He prepares a harbor before me in the homeland of eternity. He anoints the waves with oil. My ship rideth calmly. Surely sunlight and starlight shall enter me on my voyages, and I will rest in the harbors of our Lord forever. Amen. I think that was quite well the way the guy wrote it. Well, anyway, going to sea. Well, altogether I went to sea 56 years.
Wow.
I lived in Rochester, New York. I was orphaned at the age of 3, and lived in several foster homes and a couple orphanages, and not too happy a life. And I used to run away once in a while. Well, this one time, down the harbor, I would sit down there and watch the ship. And one day, this grizzly old guy comes up to me. He says, "Come on aboard, Sonny, and I'll show you the ship." So I walked aboard, and he took me down to his room. He says, "I'm going to turn my men to and get them to work." He said, "Just relax, I'll be back." Well, I noticed his room was messy. The bunk wasn't made. So I cleaned up his room and made a bunk. And he said, oh, he'd come there and he was so happy. So he says, "Oh my gosh, how about doing this and clean all my deck department quarters?" I said, "Heck yeah." And they used to throw a few pennies in a blanket, and I'd pick them up and put them in my pocket. Well, one day the ship's getting ready to go, and the bosun says, "Listen, the chief mate's not here, and they got a new one. They won't know who you are. Why don't you stay on board?" So I stowed away and worked away, and then they caught up with me about 2 months later, and I did it again, and so that was how I started going to sea.
How old were you?
14. War broke out, and I went right down, and well, in the meantime, at the age of 8, I lost my knee, and so I went down to the Army, and the Army says, "Oh no, we can't use you." So what do I do? Well, I went home, went to school again. I was a very poor student in school. They all insisted that I learn how to type and do that kind of stuff, because I'm going to have to sit down for the rest of my life when I work. Well, as it turned out, a friend of mine was going to the maritime school. He says, "Come on along to New York." I said, "Hey." So I went down there, and the doctor looked at me, he looked at my knee, and I says, "Doc, I've already been to sea. I know what it's like. Just let me go. And as soon as an instructor says no, kick me out and send me home." Well, I went through the school, and I was on my way going to sea. And I worked myself up to captain, which is the top job going to sea, and enjoyed it. Well, I was in the Second World War in the beginning, and what I did was on ships that took equipment over to Europe, And in fact, one trip into Murmansk, Russia, which was kind of a tough trip to make. And then when the war was over, well, I still continued to go to sea because that's all I knew at the time, and I didn't want to go back to where I was in my boyhood days. And the Navy took over 220 ships from the Army. It's called the Army Transport Service. And they turned over 220 ships to the Navy, and it became the Military Sea Transportation Service under the Navy. So I stayed with them, and my ship, and I stayed with the ship, transferred over. And then after the war was over, why, they were bringing the troops back. This young fella right over here rode on one of my ships, but I didn't serve on it, but I know it well. And he tells me he was seasick, and I can understand that. In 55-foot seas. Talking about high seas, I was logging 55, 60-foot seas out there once, and the Italian liner, the Conte Biancamano, took a sea, smashed in their bridge, injured their captain and somebody else up there, and that bridge was 76 feet from the surface of the water, so you can tell what kind of sea they were in. I was getting SOSs, I couldn't answer them. There was no way that I could turn my ship. If I turned my ship, I would turn over. I had to stay where I was. And then, of course, at times when I was carrying missiles, I also resupplied submarines, and I had missiles on board. Well, I couldn't answer anybody SOS because of the missiles I had on board. I had to just keep on going because it was all top secret. And with missiles, you just don't play around. So I carried them and to different ports where the submarines come in for supply. And then when the Army, when the Navy took over, they had to have 2 officers up on the bridge, and we just didn't have enough officers up there. So what they were doing was taking some men off the deck and putting them up there and calling them an unlicensed junior officer. And I was in the office at the time. I said, "Boy, I'd like to do that." Well, the top person says, "You don't have enough deck experience for that." So one day I mentioned it again, and this guy that was there, he says, "You want to go as junior deck officer?" He says, "Tomorrow, put on your uniform, get up in front of the port captain, and tell him you want to be a junior deck officer. Don't tell him about your experience. He won't ask you, just see you in your uniform." So I did. And he says, "Will you make me a promise?" I says, "Well, I'll promise, but I don't know if I can keep it." He said, "Will you get your third mate's license?" I says, "Well, I'll try." So by God, I was made a junior deck officer with hardly any deck experience other than what those little that I had before. And I was on the ship sailing. I was there about 9 months, and I come aboard 9 o'clock Monday morning, and the chief mate said, "Lanni, pack your bags and get off." I said, "Why?" The captain told me Friday for you to pack your bags and get off the ship. I said, "I want to go see the captain." He says, "No," he says, "he's not here." So I packed my bag and went off and went back to headquarters and got a lousy job on another ship. Then I got to thinking about it, and I started studying. And I studied, and finally I studied hard enough, and I got my third mate's license. And that was the beginning. I went back to that ship. The captain kicked me off on purpose because he wanted me to get my license. He had nothing against me, he just wanted me to get my license. That's why he kicked me off, and it worked. And I'm standing here in front of you as a retired captain, 56 years at sea. Okay, during the Greek Civil War. I carried mules and horses into Greece, and had 888 horses on board. We loaded them in Germany, and got into Salonika, and we were just getting ready to unload the horses, and the naval attaché came down and says, "Listen, the enemy's coming over the hills. They're starting to shoot. Captain, you got to get the heck out of here." So we backed the ship out in a hurry, and we left some people behind. Some guys were ashore. So we went to Bolos, another port, and to unload the horses. And I was ashore. I was there at noontime at one of the cafes, and I hear the whistle, boo, 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 boo. And I said, "Oh my gosh." So I just threw a bunch of money on the table and ran down, and the ship was starting to back out, and they just let go of the headline. That's the line that way out in front. And I jumped in the water, hung onto the headline, and they heaved me on board. And that's how I got on board. And then we went to Athens, and then we did get and finally the rest of the crew showed up. During Korea War, he mentioned the Missouri, somebody mentioned the Missouri and all these different ships. Christmas, we went into the harbor, just stay there for the holidays. And each ship was assigned a boat for liberty. And 2 men were operating the boat, bringing the men back and forth. Well, the last run, the boat's by the ship, and I can't find the guys. Finally, I go down to third mate's room. I was the chief mate. Go down to third mate's room, and there's the third mate. He talked these 2 sailors into bringing them a bottle, and they're all 3 of them are all boozed up. So I went to the chaplain's yeoman, and I got a sailor uniform, and I put it on, and had him, and I said, "Let's go over, and we got to pick up this crew." And so I run over there, and I'm not too experienced with these boats with the double steering gear and all. And getting there, and they start, "Mr. Lanni," and I say, "Shut up, I don't want the lieutenant to know that I'm a mister, for crying out loud." Well, the plumber, he falls in, and I'm trying not to get him in between me and the dock. And what a heck of a mess. Well, finally they got him, pulled him on board, and finally I back out of there, and I'm heading out to my ship. Sailor hollers, "That's my ship." That was the Albany. So I went over there, and of course on the Navy ships they have 2 gangways, officer and enlisted. And I was going up the officer's doing that, and I'm going like that. And I made the guy get off and go up the officer anyway. So I thought, oh boy. Then one of the other ships, the Albany, Rochester and Albany, two New York ships, and I'll never forget them. And did the same thing. Well, finally when I get back to my ship, the guys are drunk. They can't get out of the boat, get up the gangway. So I hollered to the officer on watch. I said, "Lower the lifeboat, get the lifeboat down," and he did, and we dumped all the drunks in the lifeboat. And somebody hollered, "What in the hell? Well, heck is going on?" I said, I come back with a smart and I look up, and it's the captain. Well, anyway, we got them all on board.
The captain was in the lifeboat?
No, he was. We woke him up. And he started looking down, and so when I finally got it up and got on board, he said, "Lanni, for God's sake, what in the heck were you?" I told him what was going on. Well, interesting enough, about 2 months later, he left the ship, and I was promoted to captain, which was, well, that was what I was dreaming about. So that was okay. That's 2 wars, 3 wars, and then Korea. Well, sad thing happened in Korea. I don't know if they remember the history, but they chased, the commies chased our troops out of north, and they're come running down. And I had my ship up there, and they're coming on board. Sad. It was a very sad thing to witness, seeing our troops retreat and come on board, and like they did, and took them down to South Korea to start over again. And if they had listened to MacArthur, we wouldn't have the trouble that we have today. That's my way of thinking, anyway. Well, are you familiar with Port Canaveral? I brought the first missiles into Port Canaveral for the submarines, and then I came in there with an LST in 1950. In 1950, it was nothing but a little fishing hole. Had a couple hundred fishing boats. That's all you saw in there was fishing boats. Well, I couldn't come in because once they loaded me, I wouldn't be able to go out. It wasn't deep enough. So I beached her south of the jetty, there by the pier, and that's how they loaded. An LST comes in, you put her on the beach, and you open big doors and lower a ramp. That's how you load an LST. Large ship tank, that's what they call it. And so that was my first with Cape Canaveral. Then on different ships, and then finally I come back to Cape Canaveral on the Range Sentinel. I'm stationed on the Range Sentinel. This Range Sentinel is stationed in Canaveral, and what she did was, she was a platform for submarines, new submarines, or submarines with extensive repairs. We would go about 12 miles out, and the submarine would sink. It had a mast that they welded to the tower, so and I had to watch it, and I had to get a certain distance and a certain angle off, and then they would shoot their missiles and do all kinds of things. And I had two officers on the ship. If that missile was going the wrong way, they'd press a button and it would explode it. And doing that, I would take about 200 people out as passengers. And the idea of that was the Navy started it to let the family of the crew on the submarine see what they were doing. Well, a lot of them lived, in California, all over, and they couldn't make it. So I used local people. And boy, was I ever popular. Everybody loved me. And I would pick out a gal and have her as my hostess and do these certain things. And then some tall blonde came along, and she became my hostess, and she's still stuck with me. But then I brought the first missiles in. When they opened up the Poseidon pier, I brought the first missiles in for the submarines there. Then went over on another ship station in Cape Canaveral, was the Vanguard. And people they remember the Vanguard.
That was there for a long time.
Yeah, I was captain of her twice. Wow. And we did all kinds of things on the Vanguard. We supported the Air Force. We supported the weather people. We did all. We go out in the middle of the ocean, send all kinds of balloons up. And oh, that reminds me. I was on another little survey ship. Show you what they do. And on there had this old guy from Columbia University in New York City. Glass balls, all different sizes, some solid, some half, some with holes in them, all kinds of glass balls. And he'd drop them over the side and wait till they get to a certain length, and then he would explode them. And I'd go down and say, what the heck? He said, watch this one. I said, how deep do you go in that one? He said, how deep do you want me to go? I said, what? Go 500 feet. and he would explode it. And the idea was, believe me, to build a glass submarine. Well, that never happened. But that was one of the things that I got involved in.
I was probably one of your passengers on one of those ships. In the early 70s, I was a recruiter over in Orlando.
Oh,
And we were invited out to watch one of the missile launches from
Oh,
one of the subs.
okay, all right,
And
okay,
very interesting.
yeah.
Kind of enjoyed that.
I was invited to, remember they had the school there in Orlando, and I was invited there as a inspector and all that. Yeah. Well, any questions? Anything you?
Can you tell them about transporting the Queen?
Oh, well, Operation 76, Op Sail 76. That's when all of the sailing ships came into Newark Harbor, and had this big ceremony, and the Queen was to be there, and they picked my ship for her to sit and watch what was going on in the middle of the harbor. And boy, that was great. I got all kinds of overtime, all kinds of paint. I painted my ship from top to bottom. Cleaned her up. She was beautiful. Then I see the Admiral coming down the dock with the Queen. This is in Bayonne, New Jersey. And I went down. I knew she wasn't going to come on board, so I went down the bottom of the gangway. And he introduced her to me and said, "Captain, I'm sorry, but carrier came in last night, and we're going to put her on a major ship. Mine was not that major." And I said, "Oh," but anyway, I got to shake her hand, and I didn't kiss her hand. I just shook her hand.
Did you get in trouble?
No. I took Elvis Presley over to Germany. And Vic Damone. We had a couple of movie stars, also a couple of big wigs.
Talking about Bob Boland.
Oh, okay. A while back, we were going to a black tie affair. And I'm getting ready to sit down at the table, and the bald-headed guy sitting there, he says, "Captain Lanni," he says, "I know who you are." I says, "Well, I sure as hell don't."
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right, Captain. We told him you were a sea captain. You're all right.
I sure as heck know who you are. He says, "You remember during the Congo War?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "You were going up the Congo River, and they started shooting at you. And a voice came over your radio and suggested that you turn the ship around and go back out to sea." I said, "Yeah, I remember that." And he sat there a couple of days, and then a voice came out and said, I had Indonesian troops. We had foreign troops going into the Congo. We didn't use Americans, but they used our ships. And I had 4,000 Indonesian troops on board. And they said, "You want you to come around to Mombasa." Well, that meant I had to come all the way around Africa and back up. So I had to stop in South Africa because I've got over 3,000 troops and 250 crew. I needed fuel and I needed food. And took them around, and this little guy I'm talking to is Bob Boland. He used to be mayor of Indiana, and he was Mary Boland's husband. Mary Boland was a county commissioner. Well, he has died in the. But anyway, that's how things happen. And it's interesting how many people that I bump into that rode on my ship at that time. We have a Topper Town. I don't know if you're familiar with Clear Lake. But the guy Toppertown, I brought his wife and his mother and sister home from England.
And didn't you bring the paddle boat down from?
Yeah, well.
Tell them about that.
The paddle wheel was up in. Yeah.
Coco.
No.
Well, it started in New York, right?
No, up in
Michigan,
yeah,
Detroit.
Detroit. And I brought that down through the Great Lakes and the Hudson River through New York Harbor. In fact, going through New York Harbor was the 4th of July. And there was 30,000 small boats out there, plus a bunch of big ships. And I went through them all and went outside and went down and stopped at Don Trump's, pulled up along Don Trump's pier down there at that gambling place, and then brought her on down and it took us 6 weeks. I brought her all the way down to Cocoa.
She's sitting, if you've seen the paddle boat, it's sitting right near Cocoa Village now.
But that's not her.
Oh, that's not the same one?
No.
Well,
no.
sitting there,
Yeah.
that's where it used to
The one that I brought down, the young couple broke up, and so I took it over to the port and laid up there for several months. Now I understand it's back down in the Mississippi again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun doing something like that.
Can you tell them about the girl who went overboard? Remember they had the party?
Oh, okay.
This story safe for church?
On this ship,
Use your imagination.
on the ship with troops, carried troops, as you know. And of course we had wax and females as well. And when the weather was bad, we would clear the decks, put decks off limits and make them all get inside. Well, this one time, they were horsing around out in the stern, and there was no liquor allowed. Did you bring a bottle on board there, young feller? Huh? Did you bring a bottle on?
Wouldn't do that.
No liquor, but the women, you know, would put the bottle in between you know what, and smuggle them aboard. Well, they were horsing around there, about 6, 7 of them, horsing around back on the stern, and one of the wax went over the side. So they all said, we're not going to say it, and they all went inside, didn't say anything.
Now, how big of a ship was this? How long of a ship is this about?
900 feet.
900-foot ship, so.
And we had about 5,000 troops on board. And, but one of the girls couldn't take it anymore, so she goes to the WAC captain, tells her, says, listen, so-and-so went over the side, and that was 4 hours ago. And she come running up to the bridge and told us about it, so we turned the ship right around. There's a certain turn that you make, you bring her so far this way, and then this way, and that puts you right back on the track that you were. And we go back. And 4 hours later, there she is in the water, and we put our boat in the water, and we got up there, and she was down to her bra and panties, and she then I said, stop the nonsense. I put the blanket up, I said, come on, and then I grabbed her and pulled her on board, and she knew how to handle herself in the water. Very fortunate, over 8 hours in the water. Yeah. We lost, another time, a guy, GI off a saipan. Some of these GIs went over and fell in love with the local girls, and they're going home to their wives. And this one guy, he said, oh my gosh, he didn't want to leave, so he jumped over the side off a saipan in the middle of the night. And we get in the boat and go down after him. And I took the boat hook. Well, yeah, the boat hook has a hook on one end and on the other, and I hit him with it. And when we got him down to the hospital, the doctor said, hey, yeah, why in the heck didn't you hit him with the wooden end for bleeding him? Yeah, we got him back on board. Yeah. I tell you that story.
No, I've heard that one. I like that one. I think you have a couple of stories I haven't heard yet, so.
56 years.
Well, I served on, I was captain of probably at least 30 ships. And I served on all types of ships. All my experience brought, I was really lucky to get the experience that I did. That Reforger 76, that's an operation that we do. We load up, take her over to Germany, discharge all that, and go back to the United States. And after they do all that exercise all through Europe, then we go back and we pick it up and bring it back again. Now this ship is the first what they call roll-on, roll-off ship. She has big doors on the side.
That's the one you're talking about, right?
Yeah. She was the first one of her class, and I got her in 1951. And then I was back on her in 76 for this operation because they wanted me on her because of all my time with that ship. And this opens up on the side, and we put ramps in there as well. And in fact, coming to think about that ship in Vietnam, they had to take a bunch of scouts, Vietnam scouts, up in North Vietnam, and they didn't have a ship. And I said, well, I'm sitting here empty for crying out loud. Put them on here, I'll take them. I said, heck yeah, put them on there. So they put them on there, and we snuck up north and let them off, and they snuck ashore, and I had to hurry up and got out of there so they wouldn't start getting after me. I don't know if I should have told that story or not, but anyway.
I don't think it's classified anymore. I think you're all right.
Yeah.
Can they ask questions?
Yeah, by all
Do y'all have
means.
any questions, Captain Ed?
I remember the Vanguard for a long time sitting at the port. Do you know whatever happened to that? I heard they took it out and sunk it.
No, they sank the other one, but they scrapped her.
Did they?
Now, the Vanguard and the
Redstone.
Redstone
Redstone.
were tankers to begin with, and they cut them in two, and they put 360 feet in there and made them that much longer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the other one, she supported the Air Force, and we supported the Navy and a whole lot of things on the Vanguard.
We have time for one more.
Yes.
All right.
The prayer that you said at the beginning, do they still say that today?
Yes. We are going to have in the port in Cocoa, we're going to have Armistice Day, Memorial Day, at
29.
at
6:30.
6:30 in the evening, and I'm doing the prayer, and I'm going to use this.
And the flag folded.
And I also demonstrate the flag, the folding of the flag. Are you people familiar with them when they fold the flag, when they take it off of the coffin? Well, you know, there's 13 folds,
Each fold.
and each fold has a meaning. And I show that at these things as well.
I never knew that.
Yes.
Have y'all enjoyed today?
Yes.
If you'll be available, I'm sure people will harass you before you leave if you're not in a hurry.
No.
But thanks so much for coming, and we're so thankful. So I want to pray for Captain Ed real quick and his sweet wife, and thank you guys for being here. Father, thanks for Captain Ed and all his experiences. Bless him today. Thank you for his health. Thank you for his memory. Thank you for all the stories and all the life you've given him. Bless him today. Bless his family. Bless his home. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.